Good afternoon, and you're very welcome to the program. You're listening to SIRAJ ZAIDI until 4 o'clock, and this is your own Apna radio broadcasting at 93.9 Dublin South FM. Indeed, happy Eid Mubarak, because it is Bakra Eid, and I shall be talking about Bakra Eid, which lasts for 3 days. It was yesterday, by the way, but today is in India and Pakistan as well. So that part of the world is celebrating tomorrow, although, as I said, it's a 3-day affair, so it continues 3 days. And what it is, I'll talk about that in a minute. But before that, I shall go straight to the newsroom, and Charmaine is waiting in the wing to talk about the India this week. So there we go. Charmaine, you take it away. News of the week.
Colvin, and you are listening to Apna Radio 93.9 Dublin South FM. On India this week, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio has held talks with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi in Delhi as part of a 4-day visit to the country. Rubio arrived in the eastern city of Kolkata on Saturday morning before travelling to the capital. He extended an invitation to visit the White House to Modi during their meeting, US officials said. The Indian Premier, meanwhile, said the pair had discussed issues related to regional and global peace and security. The visit comes as the two nations seek to reshape their economic relationship and amid a global energy crisis triggered by the Iran war that has acutely affected India. Energy shipments through the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow waterway that has become a flashpoint since Israel and the US attacked Iran, have virtually ground to a halt. Iran has used the effective closure of the strait, through which around 20% of the world's oil and natural gas flows, as a pressure tactic in the fragile peace negotiations with the US. India, which imports more than 80% of its energy needs, has suffered as a result. Nearly half of India's crude oil imports usually pass through the strait. Rubio discussed the situation in the Middle East with Modi, his spokesman said following their meeting. He emphasised that the United States will not let Iran hold the global energy market hostage and affirmed that US energy products have the potential to diversify India's energy supply. Rubio has indicated ahead of the meeting that the US was keen to sell India as much energy as they'll buy. There will be appetite in Delhi to boost its energy imports from the US, as it will also help bridge the trade deficit that has been in India's favour, something that has constantly irked US President Donald Trump. The US goods trade deficit with India was £43.3 billion in 25, a 27.1% increase on 2024. However, analysts say it is not logical for India to fill the current shortfall in its imports from the US. It's a much longer and expensive route for India to get energy shipments from the US. Energy security is going to be the key theme of the visit because of the Iran situation is not going to be resolved anytime soon, Vineet Prakash, Associate Professor of US Studies at Delhi's Jawaharlal Nehru University, said. The US has already given a waiver to India on buying Russian oil, but Delhi is likely to push for more concessions. Data from consultancy Grant Thornton shows that 162 Indian companies spent more than $18 billion on outbound acquisitions in 2025, a 34% increase from the previous year. Last month, India's Sun Pharmaceuticals agreed to pay $11.75 billion to acquire New York-listed women's health and biosimilars firm Organon and Company. It marked the biggest overseas acquisition by an Indian company in nearly 2 decades and followed a string of high-profile international deals by Indian firms in recent months. These include Tata Motors' $4.4 billion acquisition of Turin-based vehicle maker Iveco, IT company Coforge's $2.35 billion purchase of Silicon Valley-based AI firm Ancora, and the Bajaj Group buying a 23% stake in global insurance giant Alliance SE earlier in 2025. For many, this new wave of overseas acquisitions by India Inc. evokes memories of the global buying spree led by companies such as the Tata Group 2 decades ago, when it made audacious bets for global trophy assets like Jaguar Land Rover and Cora Steel. However, several analysts say the motivations this time are somewhat different. Indian companies are pursuing Western assets not simply as symbols of global ambition, but increasingly for strategic and operational reasons. The broader economic backdrop has also changed sharply since the early 2000s. During the previous acquisition boom, India was in the midst of a roaring bull market. Today, the country is grappling with a rapid exodus of foreign portfolio investors, a sharp slowdown in net foreign direct investment, and stubbornly weak private sector investment, despite tax cuts and production-linked subsidies offered by the government. Experts say the rush to expand overseas, despite repeated exhortations from the government to invest more within India, reflects both growing disaffection with the domestic business environment and better diversification and capability building opportunities abroad. In India's capital, Delhi, power has long circulated through ministries, embassies, and the parliament, but also through the shaded verandas of the Gymkhana Club. Last week, the federal government, which owns the 27.3 acres on which the 113-year-old club stands, ordered it to vacate by the 5th of June, saying that the land is needed for defence infrastructure and other vital public service purposes. In its notice, the government called the area a highly sensitive and strategic zone near the Prime Minister's residence and said the lease stood terminated with immediate effect. Members have challenged the order in court, and the Delhi High Court heard the case on Tuesday. The federal government told the court that it would not immediately take over the land on the 5th of June, and any eviction action would be taken only after giving the club a notice under the law. The judge said the club, its staff and members could then come back to the court to challenge the eviction. The government's action against the club follows years of scrutiny of elite institutions by Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government, and has reignited debates about privilege, heritage and public space. Indian government data shows that between 2022 and 25, roughly 1 in 6 food samples tested by authorities failed to meet food safety standards. During the same period, more than 1,100 licenses of food businesses were cancelled. Experts say these failed cases can be due to anything from poor hygiene and labelling violations to cases involving contamination or adulteration. Last month, food safety officials in Hyderabad seized more than 3,000 kilograms of adulterated tea powder, in which synthetic colours, jaggery juice and expired tea were mixed to boost appearance and profits. Food adulteration is not new in India, but a regulatory system that struggles to keep pace with a vast informal food economy and social media that spreads food safety scares faster than authorities can respond have combined to produce a growing crisis of trust. A few decades ago, food adulteration meant diluted milk or pebbles in grain. Today, raids turn up milk spiked with detergent and spices laced with synthetic dyes. The Food Safety and Standards Authority of India, created under a 2006 law, regulates how food is made, stored, transported and sold, replacing a patchwork of older laws. Under the rules, everything from large food companies to small eateries must be licensed, while food safety officers are tasked with inspection, sample collection and investigating complaints. Experts say weak enforcement capacity is a major hurdle. The scale of the problem has reached top offices. Last month, India's National Human Rights Commission held a meeting on food safety, with officials warning that contaminated products could spread widely before authorities could identify them, let alone remove them from the shelves. And finally, fans of Bollywood actor Ranveer Singh are reacting with shock after a major film workers' union asked its members not to work with him over his alleged abrupt exit from the upcoming movie Don 3. The Federation of Western India Cine Employees, a major Bollywood workers' association representing thousands of film and TV crew members, said producers had already spent around $4.7 million on pre-production when Singh allegedly withdrew from the film. FWICE said it repeatedly asked Singh to explain his position, but that he refused. The actor has not commented on the dispute, but reports say his team questioned whether FWICE had the authority to compel him to appear before it. And that's all from me. You have been listening to Apna Radio 93.9 Dublin South FM.
Thank you so much indeed, Charmaine, for great items that you have put together. And today you covered the news, international news of Marco Rubio, or Romeo, whatever his name is. He is one of the gangster of the entire Epstein gang, I call it, in India, trying to woo Narendra Modi, and obviously they believe in sort of like a dealing with the top guy, top dog, and that's it. The deal can be done, but that's not the case at all. So the rub, the question is here is the real rub of the matter is that that Hormuz is the one of contention. They don't know what to do with this, and the Hormuz is closed, and it will be open. Well, the good news is, so there are good news is that the things gradually are moving towards normalization of Strait of Hormuz. Why? Because, the world cannot be held, as they put it, at ransom by the Iranians. But the Iranians are clever people. They never saw this kind of problem while they were impunitely bombing Iran, that Iran can actually do close the Strait of Hormuz. And as I said in my program long time ago, when the war started 2 years, 2 months, for 2 months, they lasted for 2 months, good few months ago, I said very clearly, and I remember, interviewing Mr. Ishaq al-Habib, the Iranian ambassador to Ireland, and I asked him exactly the same thing. And he said, look, we said at the outset, at the beginning to the Americans, that and the Israelis, if you attack us, we will do two things. A, we will shut down the Strait of Hormuz, and B, that we would continue to negotiate with you if you want to continue and we would attack. Second thing we would do is to attack your bases in the neighboring region of the Middle East, and why they're there anyway to begin with. So they said, look, we can't reach, our missiles cannot reach directly to across the Atlantic, but it can easily reach the neighboring Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, UAE, particularly UAE, because UAE has become the, cordial partner with the Israel in this game, because they have invested heavily in UAE. And so therefore they said, we'll do two things if you attack us. And they exactly did those two things. So damage done quite a lot. Americans, billions have been damaged in the American bases in Qatar, in Bahrain, and in UAE. The entire American fleet, the military fleet has been blown away by the Iranian missiles and things like that. So the most important of all now is the Strait of Hormuz. So Marco Rubio is in in India. Somebody said to me the picture of they're sitting in front of Taj Mahal. So, the comment underneath was that, did they know that it's made by Iranians about Iranian Prince Shah Jahan, about his wife Mumtaz Mahal, who was also have an Iranian descent. So what the hell is doing sitting in front of the Iranian monument? Very, very sharply controlled and pinpointed that point. So the point is that he is in India to push American oil, which is he is stolen from Venezuela. And yes, they do have a stolen oil, and they wanted to push for the Indian market. Now, Iran and India has a long-term relationship when it comes to oil. They've been trading oil for long, long time. And before him, Abbas Araghchi was in Delhi as well, trying to rejuvenate the old deal and the old relationship. And what a deal was? It's a fantastic deal they had. For years, they have supplied crude oil to India because India is a massive market and requires the crude oil. And the Iranian oil has been flowing to India smoothly without any difficulties. Not only that, Iranians have been giving them 60-day credit. And there was at one point there was an impose on trading in dollars. So the Iranians said that fair enough, we would not take a payment in dollar if you have a problem of paying in dollars, because it's the petrodollar thing, and because Americans control that kind of route, that has been busted in this war. So they said, look, okay, we will take in gold. So the Indians were paying the Iranians in gold the cost of the crude oil. Now, Marco Rubio is there to sell the impractical thing that is, it takes a long time to travel from America to the Indian port, the oil. whereby Iranian oil get to the Indian ports within 5 to 6 days. And it's cheaper. Now Iranians are also discounting, as of yesterday, Abbas Araghchi has announced that we were happy to discount it more oil because this is a weapon for Iranians to trade actually. Yes, there is a trade, as Charmaine has mentioned, disbalance. 43 billion economic deficiency exists between America and India. And so therefore they're trying to actually push that economic disparity, into the Indian economy. Indian economy is sinking. Rupees has fallen off the record level and all that. So the future management of the Strait of Hormuz is a key point of dispute. With Pakistan floating plans for joint control under the UN auspices. That's another new thing that is emerging. And Qatar has actually sent his mediator to Iran to talk about on Strait of Hormuz. Shows progress, actually. And the progress are that the future is, obviously the Americans are opposing that control. And he's saying that, Rubio has said in Sweden in a conference that Iran is trying to create a tolling system. They're trying to convince Oman and creating a toll system to join them in a tolling system in an international waterways. There is not a country in the world that should accept that. Tough, I say, because it's Iranian waters. It's not international waters. The Strait of Hormuz is controlled historically by Iranians. They've been kind enough to let go, a freebie for a long time. Now, you have destroyed their country by bombing their nuclear facilities, by nuclear site, their schools, their hospitals, their infrastructure. Who's going to pay for it? Are you going to pay for it? No, they are clever. They have generated income from Strait of Hormuz, 500 million a day. And that's the kind of economy they're talking about, 500 million. And Donald Trump cannot stomach that fact that, we will not allow it to make Iranians that sort of money. We will make money from the oil by selling it to India. So this is the kind of thing going on back and forth. Negotiations are going, but it's not going to be in favor of that. Maybe India could buy some oil from America and indeed to balance their books by deficit, the 43 billion deficit that exists between Iran and India. The US and India. So therefore that may happen, but the actual natural market for Iran is India, actually, apart from the other countries like China, Malaysia, and all that, which is running smoothly. And they are paying. They have no... Now, by the way, if some countries are happy to pay the toll, what's your problem? If you don't want to pay, tough luck. Go elsewhere. But Strait of Hormuz belong to us. If you go through Strait of Hormuz, here you accept our terms and conditions. And therefore, every country has a right to insert their terms and condition of trade and be clever to make up the losses of this war. And this is what is going on. So this is Strait of Hormuz. Hormuz is the the main point of conflict at the moment, and they keep saying, the Iranians are saying that nothing is signed until everything is signed. That's the bottom line. Anyway, it's a long story. Do follow the news internationally. Do watch wherever you get your international news and read about it. The Americans are not going to get away, because now the other thing is happening is that the way India has unconditionally surrendered to the Americans' wishes, I don't know why. It's a new colonialism. New colonialism that we will tell you if you, you can't buy Russian oil. No, you can't do this. Who the hell you are? India suffered colonialism under the British Empire for few hundreds years, over 200 years, in fact. And now the new colonial rules are being imposed. And things like Gymkhana Club. Hello, Gymkhana Club is another, last of the Mohicans, should I say, is that it's a privilege because India is a society of disparity, rich and poor, upper class, middle class, upper middle class, lower class, and things like that. So it's an exclusive club. It's a prestigious club, Gymkhana Club, a colonial building, and they are elite. Retired army officers, retired pilots, and things like that, who go and who settle down, retired diplomats, in fact. A journalist. I've been to Gymkhana Club many times myself for tea and coffee. And high noon tea is a very popular, and cucumber sandwiches, a very English institution, if I may say so, is served at pristine cutlery and and a well-dressed barras, servants just serve those tea in silver cutlery and things like that. So it's a standard, it's a high up institution, and that Modi wants to take over. Why? He just want to destroy the culture of British India. Not happy with just shutting down the parliament. Now he's moving into Gymkhana. But anyway, the courts are there and the members will fight, and remains to be seen what's going to happen to the fate of Gymkhana Club. So this is exactly what going on in the minds of Indian powers, and the power is sort of like slipping from their hand, and not that easily, but they're trying their best through the education system. And therefore, Sharad has got a beautiful, analysis and a work done about the education system in India in the context of recently, NEET exams, a leak of the paper leak, which has not happened the first time. It happened before as well. But there we go. Listen what he has to say about this particular piece.
For last 10, 15 years, let's say this. Seems like India's education system is under attack because it's just not one paper leak. It is the series of paper leaks that have been happening for last 10, 15 years, let's say this, 77 of them. And it was not the NEET paper that we spoke about last week, but between last NEET paper leak, there have been two more instances where the exams are under question. It is SSC GD exam, which got cancelled, and the CBSE papers, the marking systems that have come out, they seem to be under scrutiny. So the credibility of Indian exam systems is suddenly under attack, and right so, because it is just 1 week that these two major incidents of exam leaks and the credibility of the exams spanning over millions of students, while on the other hand, there has been no official response of fixing the issue or correcting the issue by the Union Education Minister. So that leads me to an argument, which is in more so radical political philosophy, which suggests that if there is a democratic government with a band of autocratic leaders, they truly don't want an enlightened or a critical thinking population. Instead, the theory goes that modern states prefer highly compliant, easily manageable citizens. And therefore, they try to attack the education system. They try to systematically underinvest in public education. And that is solely to prevent the widespread application of critical thinking that would challenge the ruling class. Now, what we are saying here is easily substantiated by historical data. And if you look at last century, it presents a far more complex and paradoxical reality. By the way, Socrates was sentenced to death because he was asking questions, and the ruling class didn't like that. So that's just one simplified history of Socrates. So the premise that education breeds dissent is supported by an empirical data. Higher education is not merely a mechanism for just the economic advancement. It actually fundamentally alters the cognitive framework. It lowers the cost of political information processing. It enhances the civic skills. So when the population becomes highly educated, I'm not saying they are educated or they develop a skill set of workmanship. I'm just saying when the population becomes a free thinker, then the critical thinking starts to challenge the state policy. They start to challenge the corporate structures and they start to challenge the societal inequalities. And this we are seeing through the 1968 global wave, where in countries with rapidly expanding university systems such as France, West Germany, and United States, they saw massive student-led rebellions. Subsequently, they were called gypsies and their lifestyle, but then these were highly educated youths who challenged the country's militarism. They challenged the bureaucratic stagnation and institutional overreach. And in 1968, they nearly toppled the French government. In South Korea, in 1980s, university students, they became the rebellious kind against the military dictatorship of Chun Do-hwan. And that is where the democratic reforms were sought. Not too far ago, we have seen an Arab Spring of 2011, where in Tunisia and Egypt, it was the youth from the university educated and technologically literate citizens. They came out on the street to dismantle the decades old autocratic regime of Egyptian dictator Hosni Mubarak. So there are instances. There were protests against the Vietnam War in United States. There were anti-nuclear weapon demonstrations during the Cold War. So these were all highly educated, university-going, literate students who brought about the challenges to the government. And that is where all those leaders who aspire to be, though democratic, but then with the aspiration of leading the country for a longer period of time, they try to suppress, they try to engage the thinking class into economics of daily life. They want to make people poor so that there is less thinking time. They want to make education more expensive so that the students are engaged in sorting out their jobs so that the student loans can be recovered. They are more compliant to the corporate jobs so that the loans, the student loans, and the mortgages can be repaid. So there is a silent push into a behavior that is more compliant to the state governance. So there is a research by Munich Personal Rebeck, and they have created an empirical model which supports this relationship. And the research utilizing compulsory schooling reforms across 39 countries, they found that an additional year of education directly increases an individual's endorsement of public demonstrations and marches against the government by 6 to 8% points. And that significantly boosts political interest and knowledge. Now, this is where the governments fear independent thinking citizens. And when citizens are taught how to analyze data, how to look deeper into the rhetoric and understand the systematic power structure, then they become difficult to govern through simple propaganda of making the nation great again. Because then the citizen starts to demand transparency. Because then the students start to challenge legislative compromises. And that is when the population refuse to accept state narratives, the leaders' voices, the leaders' statements at face value. They start to match what has been said and what is the reality on ground. Therefore, the leaders may not try to invest in education on a long run because they want to mentally and by behavior in a soft way enslave the population. But then those fighting for a strong democracy must invest in education. So there is a catch here. Governments do want to invest in education, but just enough so that they understand the government's way of compliance. They understand the rules and laws, but not enough that the critical thinking becomes the way of life and destabilize the autocratic bend of a democratic government. And these are all researches. Glacier did this research in 2005 that there is a high correlation between a national education level and the democratic stability. We have understood that schooling teaches individual how to cooperate, raise the perceived benefit of political participation, and that fosters, that creates a civic culture that protects the democratic frameworks from collapsing. Now, a democratic framework is necessary in order for finances to come into the country. It is important for the foreign direct investments to come into India. And if you see the very fact that foreign direct investment is leaving India, the investors are scared of the upheaval in India, are scared of the unrest and the economic divide in India, and therefore any investments which are long term, 20 years, 50 years, they foresee a risk there. So there is a balance on the education level that has to be maintained in order to not break down the civil society, but still able to capture the democracy. Some more examples of this mechanism. So there is this Augustus Pinochet in Chile, and he was the military ruler between 1973 and 1990. And he aggressively dismantled public funding for higher education. He strictly capped university enrollments and shifted the cost of education, higher education, onto the families. And this deliberate policy targeted the educational sector disproportionately. As a result, it blocked lower income and middle class citizens from accessing higher learning. And by suffocating this access to the critical thinking and advanced degrees, his regime was successfully able to hinder the social mobility that we call today. It intensified economic inequality and stifled the academic hubs that traditionally generated organized resistance against any military rule. So that is the story of the South American country called Chile. Now, the democratic Kampuchea under Khmer Rouge, we know how brutal that regime was. Now, that country saw a heightened case of anti-education doctrine, and Pol Pot's regime sought to extremely eliminate critical thinking by physically liquidating the educated class. Doctors, engineers, teachers, and anyone deemed an intellectual, even those who were merely wearing glasses, they were systematically executed. And this is the height of destruction of human intelligence, human ability to think. And that is what we saw there. By this method, the regime was understood to build an absolute, unchallengeable, totalitarian, agrarian state, and the existence of any citizen capable of critical reflection was treated as a lethal threat to the leadership. So we have very strong cases of attack on education in order to be in the power. And therefore I say, any government which is raising taxes on books, like we saw in India, any government which raises the education fee, like we are seeing in India, any government which allows higher studies not accessible financially or otherwise to the middle and the lower economic class, like we are seeing in India currently, any government who are taxing the notebooks, the pen and pencil of school-going children, like we are seeing in India, it is a clear long-term path to create a intellectual divide in the country. It is creating dumb citizens, compliant citizens to a political system that wants to be in power, unchallenged. So we are talking about this concept as dumbing the democracies. And it is not a one-day method to do that. We have seen it is 20 years challenge. It is 30 years of journey in order to create a dumb society, a society which goes by a single slogan, single sentence narrative. And suddenly they come on the streets. They are reactive. We have seen many cases of this kind of politics in India. We have seen a Machli narrative. We have seen Mujra narrative. We have seen Mangal Sutra narrative. We have seen the Mandir narrative, which is going on in India since 1992. And what these narratives have done is they have flattened the ability to critical thinking. Today, the doctors in India, the medical profession, which we were once proud of, once where India was the global supplier of doctors to US and the Europe. Today, the medical profession has become so expensive that parents have to take a lifelong loan, a student loan, put a high value collateral to get their children into medical colleges. Quality education in government schools is negligible. About 93,000 schools across the country have been shut down. Government schools I'm talking about. Children have to travel distances to get a school education. And here I would like to quote an example of Japan, where the entire railway system ran for 5 years for a single child to travel to the school, because even one child should not be left behind. So we have global examples. We have examples even in India, where the university education was not an economic consideration at all. It was just the intention students got a degree. It was just a wish of parents and a hard work that led to the higher education. This may be a provocative claim that democratic governments desire uneducated citizens to protect leadership from critical scrutiny, from capturing the real political life, because educated people are highly disruptive. They are more demanding. In the short run of a country's history, say 30 years, this strategy may work. But in the long run, where democracies have to survive centuries together, under-investing in education is self-defeating strategy for any democracy. We are seeing this in Britain, where the student loan, where the access to higher education, university education, has become an expense so huge that students are finding alternatives to education. They are leaving their college education in favor of a small job. The career progression of a senior management is left only to those who can afford higher education. And therefore, there is a class divide that is being created in Britain. Same class divide we are seeing being created in India too, where the giant corporates will only recruit those who come from an elite school, high-paying school. Today, a child of a plumber, howsoever good intention, it's very difficult to get admission in an elite school chain of India. So there is a strict warning of class-divided education system that is being created in India, let's say for sake of diplomacy, intentional or unintentional. And this may not be good for a country in the longer run, where a civilization has to survive, where a country has to survive for centuries together. With those deeper thoughts, I leave you all until next week. Stay safe, stay informed, dutifully ask questions. At the end of the day, someone has to stand up. Bye for now.
Thank you so much, Sharath, for a beautiful, thoughts on education. And I'll take a quick ad and ad break. Don't go anywhere, and I'll come back to talk about some of the things.
Seems like India's education system is under attack because it's just not one paper leak.
This is Dublin South FM.
Strip and Dip is back, and this year we're going full 80s for our third Guinness World Record. Join hundreds of women on the beach June the 6th in Wicklow for the most unforgettable, feel-good, bear-all event of the summer. Ladies, dig out those leg warmers, tease that hair and get ready to get your kit off for kids with cancer. All for the incredible charity Aveen's Pink Tie and the families they support. Register now at stripanddip.ie. Strip and Dip. We do it for the kids. Ladies only, sorry lads.
Fight like a child.
Broadcasting to South Dublin on 93.9. This is Dublin South FM.
Indeed, broadcasting every day from our studios in Dundrum Town Centre. This is Dublin South FM 93.9, and you're very welcome to the programme. You're listening to SIRAJ until 4 o'clock local time, and this is called Apna Radio. Anyway, so this is the week of the Eid al-Adha, as we call it. Eid al-Adha. What is Eid al-Adha? There's 4 different Eids for us Muslims. There are 2, generally speaking, for Muslims. They celebrate 2 Eids, Eid al-Adha and Eid al-Fitr. Eid al-Fitr comes towards the end of Ramadan to celebrate the end of 30 days of fasting. Eid al-Adha, which is just concluded yesterday, is an Eid when the pilgrimage from all over the world goes to Mecca and Medina. Mecca is the place, Holy Kaaba, the place for the place of God, to do their annual pilgrimage. 3 million people every year go from all over the world. You just type Hajj, Hajj, in your Google search, and then you'll know what it's all about. So what it is, and when it finishes, it's a 10-day affair. People move around to the Jebel Mountains and to Muzdalifah, to, Arafah. The final journey is Arafah. And you start with the Safa and Marwa, the 2, the mountains behind. And there is a story behind which I'm going to play today, beautifully narrated by a great friend of mine. So there you go. So that's what is Safa and Marwa. And after that, it's a few act what you do, and you spend about 10 days in a sort of hardship, so-called hardship. Sometimes it's a 5-star, 7-star treatment for a lot of people who pay huge amount of money to go to. It's not for poor, unfortunately. It should be. And there was a time when it was for poor, and people used to travel on the camel's back from all over the world, in the neighboring Middle East and Far East and all that. But now airlines and, the so-called holiday packages are delivering people to go for Hajj, and they spend huge amount of money. From Europe, it costs something like €10,000 to go to from Ireland. But there are a few people who's been to attending this year, and so on and so forth. So there is 3 million people are just concluding their final journey of the Hajj pilgrimage. And when you finish your Hajj, you sacrifice a goat, a sheep, and that is called qurbani. Qurbani means final sacrifice of the animal to celebrate that, and that is Eid al-Adha. In the same vein, it can be done. Those who are not traveling to Hajj can do it in their own city, at their own home. So it's a great tradition of actually inviting people, feeding people with the slaughter of the meat that you do. In Ireland, we do it in a particular dedicated farms, particularly in manor farms in County Meath, where you can actually buy a sheep for whatever the cost of the sheep is. This year it was something like €200 or something. Used to be 60, €70. They've gone up, the cost of the sheep and all that. It has to be, purchased from the hard-earned money, honest money, and all that. And then you actually get the meat of the sheep, and you can distribute among the friends, family, and those people you would like to feed. Maybe poor people, maybe the people who don't get the opportunity to eat meat regularly. So in Mecca, where the 3 million people are taking, 3 million sheep are slaughtered towards the end of the session. And that meat is flown out of Saudi Arabia to Africa, Bangladesh, all those countries where they have a sizable amount of poor population. And now the war-riddled world of Lebanon and Palestine, and of course, wherever the wars are going. So Muslims of all over the world, it doesn't have to be Muslims, it can be non-Muslims as well. Yes, they might be sending it to Ukraine. Who knows that they're also part and parcel of the war at the moment. So that is what it is. But listen to this particular man called Dr. Rajat Malhotra, who is playing a beautiful, thoughts about the narration of Hajj, what Hajj is.
There is a saying that there is a woman at the beginning of all great things. Nowhere is this more powerfully embodied than in the ritual Sa'i, the running between Safa and Marwa. I find this ritual one of the most moving rituals. It also answers the misconception that in Islam, women are considered inferior to men. Just think, millions of pilgrims, both men and women, retrace the steps of a woman. It is incredible. They're not retracing the steps of a king or a prophet, but that of a woman, a mother, who ran between the two hills in search of water for her child. And God honored her struggle by making it as a permanent part of Hajj. Now, does that sound like a religion that sidelines a woman? Not at all. In fact, it is a direct statement from God that in His sight, true greatness lies in sincerity, in sacrifice, and in faith, not in gender or status. Quran in chapter 3 reminds us that you are members one of another. When Prophet Muhammad, may peace be upon him, was standing at the plain of Arafat, giving his farewell sermon to thousands of pilgrims, he said, "Fear God in respect of women." Yet on another occasion, he said, "Both men and women are two equal halves of a single unit." Another of his saying that the best of you are those who are best to their women. So if you still see inequality between men and women in a society, ask yourself, is it the Islam that is unequal, or is it the misunderstanding of it? Islam does not consider women to be inferior. Inferior is the understanding of those Muslim men who do not grasp the role of a woman. From Hazrat Hajira to Hazrat Maryam, Hazrat Khadija, Hazrat Aisha, Hazrat Fatima, or Hazrat Asiya, whose name has been mentioned in the Quran. Islam holds up a woman not as secondary, but central to the spiritual and moral fabric of the faith. So next time, when you hear someone saying Islam doesn't value a woman, you simply say, we walk in the footsteps of a woman every year at Hajj. That is how highly Islam honors or values a woman.
लिया जब से मैंने ये नामे मुहम्मद.
Chairman Mayon, that is something about Hajj. Safa and Marwa are the two. It's now a sophisticated air-conditioned tunnel, by the way, covered in the roof, but it used to be two mountains, and people used to walk. It's called Sa'i. Sa'i is the 7 rounds you have to do 7 times, about a couple of kilometers. Anyway, so that is Hajj, that is happening, concluded and celebrated in the form of Eid. And so therefore, I must celebrate some songs. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the first track. Here we go.
आपको हमारी कसम लौट आई, बेकरार करके हमें यूं न जाइए, आपको हमारी कसम लौट आई. देखिए वो काली काली बदलियां, जुल्फ की घटा चुरा न ले कहीं, चोरी चोरी आके शोख बिजलियां, आपकी अदा चुरा न ले कहीं, यूं कदम अकेले न आगे बढ़ाइए, आपको हमारी कसम लौट आई, बेकरार करके हमें यूं न जाइए, आपको हमारी कसम लौट आई. देखिए गुलाब की वो डालियां, बढ़ के चूम ले नया आपके कदम, देखिए गुलाब की वो डालियां, बढ़ के चूम ले नया आपके कदम, खोए खोए भंवर भी है बाग में, कोई आपको बना न ले सनम, बहकी नजरों से खुद को बचाइए, आपको हमारी कसम लौट आई, बेकरार करके हमें यूं न जाइए, आपको हमारी कसम लौट आई. जिंदगी के रास्ते अजीब हैं, इनमें इस तरह चला न कीजिए, खैर है इसी में आपकी हुजूर, अपना कोई साथी ढूंढ लीजिए, सुन के दिल की बात यूं न मुस्कुराइए, आपको हमारी कसम लौट आई, बेकरार करके हमें यूं न जाइए, आपको हमारी कसम लौट आई, बेकरार करके हमें यूं न जाइए, आपको हमारी कसम लौट आई.
जी मेरे भाइयों, बेकरार करके मुझे यूं न जाइए, आपको हमारी कसम लौट आइए. ये जो गाने हैं, ये let me talk in Hindi today. I always talk the program in English, but these songs have got really in-depth philosophy, and those writers who used to write these songs were really Indian poets and shair and all that. So there's a phrase used in Mumbai that it's a beautiful film called Gaman, and it's all about a taxi man, in fact, who comes from a small town in Lucknow to Mumbai, a big town. And it's called migration, from the urbanization and things like that. So, which is a phenomena, in fact. Talking about that, by the way, it's so sad to see the images of all those poor people has been shoved around, and their homes have been destroyed around the Bandra railway station. They used to live around the Bandra railway station, the poor people, on the lands which were obviously belonged to the government, but they have no place to live in Mumbai when they come to Mumbai. Again, the victim of urbanization, because they cannot earn their livelihood back in their own, towns and cities, small places. So they come to Mumbai, and when they come to Mumbai, they have to live somewhere, and so they make shanty towns and makeshift homes near the Bandra railway station and wherever they get the places. And that is now MCD, the place, the management of the local council is now clearing, destroying, killing, beating those people. This is inhuman. Nobody is talking about it. Nobody's paying attention to it. No media coverage of those sort of things. Their homes are taken away from them by force. Yes, bulldozers have been going on to destroy the houses of poor people. And it was called the Gharib Nagar. Gharib Nagar means poor colony, a poor city. But these kind of things are just unacceptable, intolerable, and must be highlighted on an international, platform. So anyway, I'm continuing with the songs, and that is unfortunate state of affairs. So sit back, relax, and enjoy another song.
पतंग मेरी चली रे, चली चली रे पतंग मेरी चली रे, चली बादलों के पार होके डोर पे सवार, सारी दुनिया ये देख देख चली रे, चली चली रे पतंग मेरी चली रे। हवा में लहराए, जैसे उड़न खटोला उड़ा जाए, मस्त हवा में लहराए, जैसे उड़न खटोला उड़ा जाए, लेके मन में लगन जैसे कोई दुल्हन चली जाए रे सवरिया की गली में, चली चली रे पतंग मेरी चली रे, चली चली रे पतंग मेरी चली रे, चली बादलों के पार होके डोर पे सवार, सारी दुनिया ये देख देख चली रे, चली चली रे पतंग मेरी चली रे। पतंग का धानी है ये नील गगन की रानी, बाकी बाकी है उठान है उम्र भी जवान लागे पतली कमर बड़ी बली रे चली चली रे पतंग मेरी चली रे चली चली रे पतंग मेरी चली रे चली बादलों के बेल बेल चली रे चली चली रे पतंग मेरी चली रे
Chimar Bhaiyo, Chali Chali Re Batanga. There's another beautiful song, old songs, and I'm staying with the old songs. And last song left before I say goodbye. I might as well say goodbye to you now and let you enjoy the last track of our super hit films, the Hindi film industry called Bollywood by affection. It's not a very good term. It's a derogatory term, by the way. But a lot of people do use it. And indeed, I try to lean over a certain amount of songs which are, paying homage to great singers, great films and things like that. So anyway, that's the last song and I hope you'll enjoy it. And I shall be back same time, same place next week. Don't forget to tune me in. That's your own Apna Radio broadcasting at 93.9 Dublin South FM. We are here for our community and powered by our community, featuring volunteers, sharing the sounds and the story that matters to the South Dublin. Tune in every day from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. on 93. Not me. I'm only once a week, in fact. I'm talking about the radio station. We have a comprehensive radio station that goes from 9 a.m. in the morning to 9 p.m. in the evening. Anyway, beg your pardon, 11 a.m. in the morning to 11 p.m. in the evening. So there you go. Enough about the radio station. Goodbye and enjoying. If you're having a great time under the sun, keep soaking up as much as vitamin D you can, and that's good for your health. Anyway, bye for now and enjoy this particular final track and happy Eid al-Adha.
क्या है तू है